Welcome to Email After Hours by SenderScore, powered by Validity.
We're your hosts. My name is Guy Hansen.
And I'm Danielle Gallant, and this is Email After Hours. As you have come to expect from Email After Hours, today we're diving into another essential part of email marketing, and that is content strategy. So striking the right tone and promoting the right offers is critical to the success of any email campaign. And on this episode, we are going to learn about how marketers should come to define their content strategy, what some of the common pitfalls are with that, and how they can measure success.
Our guest today is Samar, a seasoned email strategist and copywriter who has helped countless brands elevate their email marketing game. From designing strategies that align with business goals to teaching marketers how to master the art of writing for email, Samar has seen it all. She'll be sharing her insights on what it takes to create impactful email campaigns, the common pitfalls to avoid, and the techniques that can turn a good email into a great one. We are thrilled to have her on the show today. Welcome to the show, Samar.
Thank you, Guy. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
And we always kick things off with a bit of fun, Samar. We've all had those moments where email marketing kind of just takes over our brains, right? Perhaps it even takes over our brains when we sleep. So just an icebreaker question. Have you ever had a crazy email-related dream?
I don't know about dreams because I don't remember mine, but if my husband is to be believed, I talk about emails in my sleep. And I always tell him, give me the proof. Like either record me talking about emails or like I will consider this teasing because I will admit admit to him, but it is entirely possible because I think about emails day in and day out, and I am creating strategies and solving problems with emails for my clients. And so, it's entirely possible.
I feel like you have to have those recorded because what if you had this amazing insight or an amazing idea while you were asleep? Let's get that on record.
Oh my God, I've never thought about it that way, but that's a good idea. I'll ask him to do that next time.
All I can say is welcome to the club because I've been woken up the night before with a wife's elbow in my ribs. And when I go, plaintively, what was that for? It's like you were talking about deliverability again. Let's jump into today's topic. I think, from our side, Danielle and I often work with clients who want to redefine or update their email content strategy, only to find that the very concept is often not very well defined. So can we start off by breaking down what a content strategy really is? And, have you ever encountered a new client that actually just couldn't define their content strategy and you had to help them?
Yeah, we're kicking off with such a good question because I see this or come across this time and time again, right? Because when a client comes to me and says they're looking to redefine or create an email strategy for their brand, and when I ask them, tell me what that means, what is your ideal scenario, they will talk about life cycle emails, promotional campaigns, weekly newsletter campaigns. And I'm like, those are components of your email marketing program. That's not a strategy. And then it takes a little bit of a re-education or a realignment of their concepts of what a strategy is. That's the one thing that I always say, right? I'm like, you're getting into the nitty-gritty before defining the big picture. So let's zoom back 30,000 feet or something and, let's take it from the top. And that's always, I can see the looks on the other side of the camera, right? They're always surprised. But then I also see when it suddenly makes sense to them. Instantly I see, oh, this is why our strategy never worked. Oh, this is why it was always so complicated because we were never defining what we were trying to achieve with our strategy beyond email sales.
And it can be hard to know where to begin, right? Even whether it's content strategy or clients that are coming to us when their deliverability is just a mess. It's really hard to start, right? It can just be hard. So is that where you typically begin when you're working with your clients to develop or redevelop their content strategy? Are there any critical first steps that organizations often miss when they're getting started?
Yeah. All right. So the first step is always let's It can get very confusing, especially when you're talking about something in a new way and they've not considered it that way. But I'm like, listen, let's hop on a strategy call and I'll walk you through this from the top. And by the end of it, you'll have the bare bones of your strategy. Deliverability is something that I do not, is not my area of expertise, but it's always the first thing on the items like, hey, this is something that you need to go figure out whether this is done correctly. And from there, we look at like, what are your business goals? Once those business goals are set up, we discuss ideas on how to achieve it, right? So let's say a brand will say, well, one of the problems, that we, and I don't say, what are you trying to solve? I'm like, in an ideal scenario, well, if I could solve this one problem for you or something that would disappear and suddenly start working like a well-oiled machine, what would it be? And the answers vary from, well, we've got this big group of subscribers who have never bought from us, or the conversion rate for new subscribers becoming first-time purchasers is really low, and we want to, bring that number up. And so all of a sudden, that's a goal, right? We want to convert more subscribers to make their first purchase. And so then we discuss ideas. Okay, what are we going to do? How are we going to get them to convince them to buy from you? And it doesn't start at emails. I'm like, let's talk about your opt-in offers, right? Is your opt-in offer the kind of offer that will attract them? And so we take it piece by piece, and I walk them through the entire customer journey and basically mapping out their entire email customer journey, and then like point out areas where it's intersecting with emails. And then I create the entire email journey plan of the lifecycle automations. And then, of course, a brand needs a ton of automations, right? And part of that strategy is then also the email content calendar, right? And so once the automation side is done, I'm like, okay, now let's come up with a strategy for our weekly campaigns. How many emails are you sending? How many do you want to send? What are your goals for these? Do you want to is your number looking good enough? Are you happy? Do you want to bump that up? And so we discuss all of those. And it's the same set of questions for all the different stages of their business, right? Customer journey. And then promotional campaigns. I'm like, when we're mapping out your email content calendar, which months do you want to run your promotional calendars? Because having one bad month of email revenue is not a good enough excuse to like run a promotional campaign the next month. Because every single brand has slow months, right? And a lot of those brands have like summer months are very slow, unless like you're a brand that does back to school really well, right? And so I'm like, listen, we need to be prepared for these. And that's why you're creating a strategy and a calendar so that in the months that you are going heavy, we can make enough sales. So it's a lot of like understanding their business goals, their problems, and then coming up with solutions. And honestly, my job as a strategist is really just to ask a ton of questions.
And Samar, it sounds like you often approach your clients in a similar way that we do, even if ours is deliverability and yours might be more content focused. You're playing email detective. You're playing email
That's
doctor.
Such a good way
at the beginning.
Yeah, I love that analogy.
You mentioned before, you touched on conversions and conversion rates. And obviously, these are really heavy areas of focus for marketers, and rightly so. But of course, there are always going to be subscribers who don't convert. And we've talked about re-engagement or win-back campaigns for those subscribers who don't engage, and consider how subscribers who don't purchase can be strategically integrated into a brand's marketing efforts. So what strategies have you found particularly effective when re-engaging these kind of lapsed subscriber segments? And how do brands kind of learn from these customers and their lack of action?
Oh, one of my favorite ways to do it is just like asking, right? Hey, we just had this amazing promotion and we noticed that you didn't take advantage of it. Are you comfortable sharing why? And it's just a simple email, and it's a one question email. And I always encourage brands to, just say hit reply. Nobody's looking forward to filling out forms. Hit reply, make sure that you have like an email address that people can actually reply to. Make sure you have like a customer service app integrated with your email marketing program so that all of these responses are being collected in a single place. And then when you have enough responses, just go through them, look for patterns, right? And I also recommend that a brand sends out a survey to a small segment of their users every 2 to 3 months, right? So, and they'll be like, oh, we don't want to do it too often. And I'm like, that's probably because you're sending it to your entire list. No, send it to your most engaged and also like a small segment of your most engaged. And if you're trying to find out why people are not buying, then send it to people who've just been through your welcome sequence and who haven't bought. Find out why, right? What are the missing gaps? And it's almost always a messaging mismatch, right? Oh, we didn't think this your product could do what we wanted it to do. And then there's this, you start understanding, oh, our welcome sequence needs to be updated because there's this message mismatch here. People are looking for something else, which our product does, but we're not communicating it clearly enough. And so that's one of my favorite ways of figuring out, right? But when you do this long enough, right, you also kind of can understand or get insights from buying patterns of like the overall pattern of your customers, right? So just as a brand knows which of their months are slow, if a brand has just run a promotional campaign, they will know which are their most popular products. They will know which are their least popular products, and they'll figure it out. And again, it's just testing, right? And so yes, we all should. The first step is asking customers, but the other step is also focusing or studying customer behavior and patterns, right? So that's not an answer that you will get immediately. You need enough data to study it, to understand it before you make any decisions.
And of course, different emails have different purposes. I'm thinking, for example, promotional emails should have different copy and intentions compared with a newsletter, for example. So, building on what you were just telling us, do you think there's a trick to make sure that a specific message type stands out and achieve its intended goal? You know, how do you differentiate between an email that informs versus one that's designed to inspire action?
My philosophy with emails is very simple, and it doesn't matter what kind of email you are creating, right? And the one thing I do is ask myself 3 questions. Why am I sending this email? And another way to ask this question is, what is the goal or purpose of it? What am I trying to achieve, right? And I don't believe in sending emails that don't have a purpose or that don't ask the reader to do something, even if it's a simple like reply, click, forward, whatever it is. The second questions you should be asking yourself before sending an email is like, what happens when the subscriber does what you want them to do, right? Which is the conversion point. What conversion do we want to happen in this email? And it's usually it's like a click, right? Let's assume whether that's buying something, sharing something, forwarding something, whatever it is, that's a click. But the third most crucial question I ask is what happens when they don't do what we want them to do, which is going to be the vast majority of people, right? We focus so much on conversions that we forget that the big percentage of our subscribers will just, either ignore our email, won't take the action that we want them to take. So what is our plan for them? How are we going to bring them back? And then it doesn't matter what kind of email you're sending, right? The first question defines the purpose. And so whether it's a promotional campaign, whether it's a transactional email, you understand what you're trying to do right at step 1. And then you design the email accordingly. And when it comes to actually writing or creating the emails, it's write to one. I have like this rule of 1, and I think it's so, anybody with copywriting experience will recognize it immediately, right? But it is adapted for email. It is, you are writing to one reader. And so you could have like a list of like thousands of subscribers, but the person reading your email on the other side of the screen is just one, right? And even if like you're emailing a team of people, right? Everybody has their own computers, so they're reading their emails alone. Nobody's like hunched up over a single screen, so you don't have to like you have to make sure that you're talking to one person, and then your email should have just one main message. So many times we see an email trying to do multiple things, right? Hey, read this article, check out this product, follow us on social, all of that. No, one main message that correlates to the action you want them to take. And then the third thing is one type of call to action, right? And the reason I say one type of call to action is because it's a little silly to just have like one call to action in an email. You absolutely want them to give multiple opportunities to convert while reading your email, but they all need to lead to the same place. Because if you include different types of CTAs in your email, every new CTA just dilutes your conversions. So make sure that every single link or click or button is going to the same place so that you get the maximum conversions that you are after.
It's funny that you mentioned that, only because we do a lot of, on my team, on the professional services team at Validity, we do a lot of predictive eye tracking to try to identify where subscribers are actually focusing visually, what the appeal of the email is and where subscribers will look. And there are so many places that are typically missed, like, for example, logos, which lead nowhere. So being aware of even where the images, like benign images, might take you is important. Before you were talking about clicks, we already touched on conversion. So let's talk metrics. Marketers love metrics, but success measurement, it can be difficult, right? It's kind of like starting out. We have to know, in addition to what the goal of a campaign is, we have to know exactly what we're trying to measure. So apart from maybe the obvious, what KPIs should marketers be looking at to determine whether or not a campaign is successful?
Oh, okay. So my answer is very different than most people, right? And my approach to email metrics is that they are not a good success barometer, right? So metrics are great and should absolutely be tracked, but their role is when something doesn't perform the way we were hoping it to perform. So when you're investigating why something didn't perform is when metrics play a role. When you are sending out emails, you are going after a business goal, right? And so it's the more than, like, let's say, tracking or the click rate. I want to see how many sales that email got, right? And if that email got low sales, then I want to see, okay, where did the people fall off? Why did it get low click rates? What was the open rate? I mean, the reason my approach has changed is because I help brands solve business problems or achieve business goals and email is just my weapon of choice, right? So metrics have always been a form of email metrics for diagnosing the problems. I don't set success metrics by email metrics, like, oh, we got like a 60% open rate, that's great. Oh, we got a 40% click rate, that's great. I only focus
that would be great, a 40% click-through rate. That would be great.
You could get those. There are ways to get it if you gamify your emails, right? And so again, these are strategies, email specific strategies on, like, hey, we want more clicks. Okay, let's gamify your emails. But you don't even need fancy tools to create a gamified email, right? It could be as simple as, here's a shirt, which of these pants would you choose to go with? And so it's a game, right? Your brain has already chosen by the time you finish reading that sentence. And it's as simple as getting a click. And so this is why I say getting clicks is easy, getting sales is harder. And so again, email metrics for diagnosing what the problem is or why an email didn't perform as well as we hoped. But other than that, I want to say, if you were to push me, I would say the one metric that I pay more attention to than most is the click to open rates. How many people that opened the email actually clicked through? Because on its own, open rates are unreliable. On its own, just click rates don't give me the complete picture. Because what if a lot of people just didn't even open? And now we have bots that like auto click every email. And it's just, imagine the headache of figuring all of that out. Like, I'd much rather focus on the business goal and then think about wading into the metrics if those business goals aren't met.
I agree. Now, building on that, I think we all know that subscriber engagement plays a really, really important role in informing how the major mailbox providers like Gmail and Microsoft and Yahoo perceive a sender's reputation. And we know that's important because a great sender reputation means higher inbox placement rates. So here we are, we're back to deliverability again. Let me practice that in my sleep. Deliverability. Sorry, I'll digress. Do you think there's any particular content styles or copy techniques that you'd recommend specifically to enhance subscriber engagement?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I know if asking questions is a great way to do it. Not when you're asking for a click, asking questions just before asking people to click is like recipe for disaster, because they'll say, oh, they'll answer no and then move forward. And people's brains are, I don't know if it's okay to swear on this podcast, but people's brains are pieces of shit, like little shits, right? And we all want to be that we all want to like rebel. And so if somebody's asking like, hey, do you want a discount? No, move forward, right? Because we didn't ask whether they even wanted to shop from us or not, right? And people are contrarian beings. Let's just go with that instead of like the not safe for work word that I used previously. Remember the 3 rules of writing an email, which is write to one reader, make sure that there is one message and then one type of CTA. But other than that, make sure your email is conversational, because one of the many things I believe about email marketing and approach email marketing in a way is that before email is a marketing tool, it's a communications tool. So whatever we want to say, even if it's a marketing message, we're communicating it with somebody. So say it in a way where it sounds like it's coming from a friendly peer or colleague, if not your best friend or your mom. And it's said in a way where it's easy to read, it's easy to understand, it's easy to skim, right? So if people's attention span have gone down from 20 seconds or 12 seconds to 6 seconds now, right? And I saw this recently as I was like doom scrolling Instagram a few days ago, right? So our attention spans have shrunk. And now you have, let's say, a 6-second rule. Also, if your subscriber did not open the email, will your subject line and your preview text give them the context of what the email is about? Because deciding to not open an email is also telling you something. This email was not relevant to me, and I want to make sure that my subscriber is making a decision based on like after getting like the proper information. So I always make sure that my subject line and my preview text have the information they need to make a decision on whether this email is relevant to them or not.
Awesome. Wait until Apple starts deciding what that preview text should be. Things could start getting really exciting.
Thanks, Apple.
Touching on another aspect, you know the old saying, picture paints 1,000 words. But maybe that's not always the case for email. I think, we all know that text is still pretty important, especially when it comes to creating digestible and accessible copy. So what's your thoughts about a good mix, a good balance between text and images in email copy?
I love this question. Okay. So when you're selling in emails, feel free to use a mix of copy and images, right? And then there are like these best practices. Make sure you're using all text for your images. Make sure that your email is not one big image. Instead, like there's a text box and the images are separate, so that if somebody isn't displaying images, which is a lot of us because we're on our mobiles and we want to save data, they will still be able to read through the email even if they don't see the images, right? And then, so images for those emails is fine. But if it's a message from a founder, or if it's an update on, let's say, a delay in shipping, it should absolutely look like a personalized email or a personal email. And it can absolutely be simply text-based. So a lot of brands don't even nowadays, not a lot of, there are quite a few brands that will just choose to do text-only emails instead of images, right? They find it easier to do so. It's how they've set aside. It's how they've like created like it's almost like a brand call for and like it's an image only or sorry, it's a text only email from them, and they're happy. But that said, if you are a brand that is doing images plus texts, have a healthy mix of two. So if your welcome sequence has a brand story, absolutely have a photo of your founder and whatever that first product that they created, whatever story you're telling, have that. But make sure that the text part of it isn't getting overshadowed by the images. And also just finally, don't be afraid of sending text-only emails. When in doubt, send a text-only email, see how your audience perceives it, and then maybe optimize it with images and everything later.
Every brand has its own tone, its own voice, as you're saying here. So still, a lot of these brands they're like craving a refresh, right? They want something new. They want to stand out. But how can marketers keep their strategy fresh and effective, but maintain sort of the best bits of their program? How do you approach that?
So before you start creating a strategy, you study what they already have, right? And you set aside what's working well. And you create two piles basically. One is for what's working well, the other is what's not working. And so whether that is the style of their email. So a lot of times the parts that I find that are working well for brands are the messages from their founders or specific product emails. Or like I worked with a brand that used to do limited drops every week, right? So Tuesday was their day for limited drops. And once those were sold out, they were sold out, right? And so the Tuesday emails were no matter what kind of email you sent on Tuesday. If it was about a limited drop, like it could be the worst designed email, and we knew we would get clicks and we would get sales because they trained their customers and subscribers to expect that email. And if there was anything left over by Thursday or Friday, they would get an update like, here's what's left over from the limited drop, get it before, right? And 99% of the time they would sell out. And anything that was left over at the end of the season, they would have like the end of the season sale. And so when I was working with her, and I was like, yeah, we're not touching that. You've already dialed that part of your strategy down and it's working. And I have no recommendations to make because there's no way to optimize this because it's selling so well. And so I was like, unless you want to change, unless something's changing in your business. And one of the things that was changing in their business was that they were introducing these staples, which would be in stock all the time. And they were like, well, how do we sell these? Because all of our strategy so far has been limited drops and we aren't sure how to sell something that's going to be in stock for like, it's never going to go out of stock basically. And so we talked about how to do that.
So I'm changing gears slightly.
Yep.
We've talked quite a lot about your client consulting work, but there's another string to your bow because you also teach email courses and workshops.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that resonates with Danielle and myself. We often find ourselves walking a real tightrope when we're doing our webinars because, we live in the email ecosystem all day, every day. So we're really in the thick of it, really in the weeds. And then finding that, when you're presenting to an external audience, we often have to strike a balance that, informs the email veterans, but isn't too overwhelming for the newbies. And is that something you have to deal with in your courses and presentations, sort of addressing those varying levels of expertise?
All the time, right? Because especially in a webinar, people will come in because they're interested in learning from you, and it's a mix. It's your peers attending to support you, it's newbies attending to learn from you, and then it's the veterans or like prospective clients who are there to figure out whether you're as good as everybody says you are. And so my workaround to this is I will have a slide and the start that talks about like what we're going to cover and the things they need to know or understand before we dive deeper into the rest of it. And so for my courses, and I teach an email strategy course for e-commerce and SaaS companies. And so for both of those courses, the first workshop is understanding the fundamentals of emails done right. And so for the e-commerce one, the fundamentals are slightly different. For the SaaS emails, the fundamentals are slightly different. And that's the first workshop. And it doesn't matter whether you are a seasoned email marketer or you're just new. Like you need to know this in order to learn from me. And that's my approach to whether I'm teaching a single webinar or I'm teaching an entire course.
Guy, what would be the course that you would teach?
It would be Deliverability 101 and 201 and 301.
And your wife is an expert on deliverability. Samar, this has been such a great conversation. We're about to start winding down. And as we begin every episode with a bit of an icebreaker question, we're going to end with a closing kind of quick fire question. So presumably, like us, you have seen a billion emails. Like the good, the bad, and the ugly of email content has surely come through your mailbox. So have you ever seen an email that has just stopped you in your tracks, whether for the right reasons or maybe the wrong reasons? And what was it?
So the thing about anything that stops you in your tracks is that the wrong reasons are more memorable, right?
Oh, yeah.
The right reasons just aren't. But I will call out two examples, one right and one wrong. And one was from a brand called Bloom. I had ordered from them during the Black Friday promotion last year, and there was a delay. And I was so impressed with the way that their team was on top of it. There was a 3-week delay. We got an email every single week with real updates of what was going on with the supply chain, right? And nobody asked for it. Like I worked in this industry long enough to know that during Black Friday, delays in shipping are going to happen, especially if you're like ordering like toward the end of it, right? Or like during the holiday season. But the emails were from their founders. They were text-based. And so the interesting thing about that was the background color of those emails was the same for every single email that there is. But instead of images, there was like it was just text, right? And so you could tell it was an HTML email, but it was all text and brand colors. That's it. And so it was like an apologetic email telling us why there was a delay, what they were doing about the delay, and what the new delivery date was. And the other 2 weeks, I was so impressed with those emails because I had not seen another brand do it this well, right? On the flip side, I'd ordered from a brand, and because it's an occupational hazard. I feel that I order stuff from brands that I find intriguing, and it was a brand for personal hygiene for men, right? And I had sent my brother-in-law some soaps and body washes, and I was like, listen, everybody raves about their smell. Can you just test it out? And like, is it really as great as everybody says? I want to know. And I also want to dissect their post-purchase. And so I sent him some stuff. He got it 8 weeks later. No communication. And I ordered and I forgot, and like, I was asked, like, did you get it? And he's like, no, I thought you canceled them because I never got anything. And then I followed up with them and I heard back after 8 days. And I was like, that's just bad customer service. So not only did you fail to update, but you also failed to follow up when I reached out. And I reached out after 4 weeks. Plenty of time for them to update or send like a general email telling all of their customers of the delay, right?
There we go. This has been such a great conversation. I'm actually sorry we're going to wrap it up, but we do. Samar, it's just been such a pleasure having you join myself and Danielle on Email After Hours today. It's been a really, really great conversation. For our audience, be sure to tune in next time. That's 2 weeks from now. And also hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Plus, don't forget to visit senderscore.org for more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
Guy and I are always excited to meet new guests that can join us on Email After Hours. So if there are any listeners who might like to come on an episode, drop us a comment or ping us on LinkedIn. Thank you so much, and we'll be back in another 2 weeks' time.
Bye. Be sure to tune in next time and hit subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And don't forget to visit senderscore.com for loads more great resources to help you become a stronger sender.
To all you sleepless senders out there, thank you for joining us after hours, and see you next time.